Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fortified Life podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. I'm your host, Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify. Every week, we have the opportunity to bring on all types of guests, authors, speakers, coaches, leaders of nonprofits, even people in the C suite that are also passionate about putting God back in business. And it's no different this week. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited because today's topic, we're going to learn about someone who has expertise in the area of relationships. Before I bring her on, let me introduce her to you. Dr. Cassandra Bolar is a healthy relationship advocate who truly believes in the capacity for change and positive transformation for couples. She has committed her life to improving the relational well being of couples and families. The legacy of healthy relationships begins with you is a principle she hopes will inspire couples to set a positive course for their intimate relationship that could potentially impact future generations. She brings a wealth of experience in counseling, relationship education, and research, and she's been making contributions to that field for the past 12 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Fortified Life, Dr. Cassandra Bolar. Dr. Cassandra, how are you doing?
I'm well. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. Now, Dr. Cassandra, a lot of people, they hear that resume and that background and they go, oh my goodness. But like everybody that's ever come on the show, and more so anyone in life, there's a story behind everything. So talk to us about your professional journey and how you got to where you are today.
It's really God because
Mm.
when I first started out, I always knew that I had a heart for children and their well-being. Kids have always just had an affinity for me, as well. And I just always wanted to promote the well-being of children. It's just, I guess, in my DNA. So I went to school with the presumption that I was going to be a pediatrician. So I'm originally from Georgia, and back in my day, you could go to school for free with the Hope Scholarship. And I was
Mm.
able to go to school for free at the University of Georgia, all 4 years on the Hope Scholarship. I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, did well my first semester, but then I remember one day my nephew was at my parents' house and he fell and hit the side of his eyelid, and it
Ooh.
was like gushed open,
Wow.
bleeding. I couldn't even look at it. Like literally my stomach turned. It's like something within me. It was like, okay, I can't even look at this. I don't know if being a pediatrician is gonna be up my alley. And then
Hmm.
I also encountered chemistry, and I loathe those chemistry classes. I was like, if I gotta go through this, I don't know. And so honestly, I was really prayerful. I was, I believe, a sophomore at UGA, and I said, Lord, I really need you to guide me with my career with respect to my
Mm.
major.
Mm.
I want to do something. I mean, I literally was like very intentional, and I prayed to the Lord about where does He want me to focus on when it comes to my concentration. So I started to explore, and I talked to an advisor in the education department. Because even when people meet me, they automatically think I'm a kindergarten teacher when I tell them I'm a teacher. But so I was like, okay, I love kiddos. I want to help them in some kind of way. And I just poured my heart out to this advisor. And she was like, oh, I don't think it's the education department. I think I have the perfect department for you. And it was child and family development.
Mm.
I went there and I just felt at home, beyond fascinated with the different I guess, classes within the degree program, rather. And it was just so fascinating to me. And it just really resonated with me. And then from there, I was just like, okay, what impacts the well being of children the most is that home environment. How
Mm.
does the parental relationship and their relationship with one another, how does that spill over and impact the well being of children? And because when we think about it, families are a system, and how one area of the system is definitely going to impact other areas. And I believe that we look at child well-being in a very isolated, siloed perspective, whereby we're like, okay, what can we throw at child well-being to improve well-being, but we have to really look at it from a contextual perspective and thinking about the
Mm,
environmental setting that children are embedded in and how can we create uh, supports that help them individually while also helping the children as individuals. And so I was just really prayerful, and it was just like God just kept leading me. So from there, I started doing I was doing research the whole time while I was at UGA, and then
hmm.
I started off since I was a biology major. I was doing research, genetics research
Wow.
on sorghum of all things. But then once I started to get into the child and family development program, I was able to do research on married couples, and it was just so fascinating to me. I was like,
Mm,
oh wow, you can do this. So from there, I, I decided, okay, wow, this is so interesting. I was talking to my major, well, not my major professor, but my professors at the time. And I was like, I think I'm interested in the marriage and family therapy program. I started because my research advisor as an undergraduate student, I believe his name was Lee Pratt. He was doing some marriage research, and I started asking professors, and they were telling me about a really wonderful marriage and family therapy program at the master's level at Auburn. And but they only take 6 students each year. And I was like, I
oh,
don't know if I'm gonna
wow.
get in there, but I did apply, and just doors started to open. From there,
Wow.
I got engaged with community-based participatory research with an amazing mentor, and she's doing this work to this day within the healthy marriage space. And that opened up to me the world of relationship education using evidence-based
Mm,
programming and interventions in the community to improve people's knowledge as well as skills when it comes to healthy relationships. And so it was just the Lord's hand in every area. From there to once I started my first job as a professor, I did family life education. So when I went to Mississippi State and served as an assistant professor there, as well as the statewide family life specialist. Um, for programming throughout the state. And so, I've just been holding on all that time. So, and I'm also a counselor. I don't know, this is a roundabout way of doing it, but I'm a marriage counselor as well. I do a lot of community-based work with family life education here in Atlanta, as well. So I think that's all the things I do. Oh, and I do research on
mm.
fathers because I see
Oh, that's
fathers as being
good.
so critical to the foundation of the family. And so do research there. And everything that I say here does not represent this center, but I also work for the National African American Child and Family Research Center that is housed within Morehouse School of Medicine as well. So that's how I ended up here, and I teach at West Georgia.
Doctor, I got to tell you, not only is all of that just the impressive of your experience, it's also exciting because I'm a little bit of a nerd myself. So when I hear you talk about different aspects of how God led you. But then the steps that you took, because as you know, doctors, when you get into, so you can be interested in something, but if you don't actually go down the path, and one theme I just kept hearing in your whole story was intentionality. Because I feel like a lot of people, they could have had the same level of exposure or decision to, sure, I'd like to go into that. But then what I hear from you is the difference is you didn't just talk about it, you went and did it. And then, so the power of intentionality, the power of mentorship, working with counselors, professors, and then another lesson, feedback is a gift. Oh, I kind of want to go in that, or nope, I do not want to go into that. And I think knowing saying no is just as important as what your yes is. So, Dr. Cassandra, I got so many nuggets just off of what you just shared. Now I'm excited. There's a lot of different directions we can go, but I just wanted to highlight just some of what I took away. in that short bit that you shared. Another thing is, I won't hold it against you. So my wife and I went to Georgia Tech, so I won't hold it against you that you went to UGA. So, but by the way, listener, it's a wonderful institute. It's wonderful. But if you are from the state of Georgia, then you know that the rivalry is called cleaned old fashioned hate between
It's
Georgia and
real.
Georgia Tech. And it's very, very real. But we first are brother and sister in Christ, and that supersedes things like Georgia Tech. So I just wanted to slide that in there too, Doctor. But go ahead. I think you were about to say something.
Yes, yes, that's so funny. I just hopped around the SEC, honestly. I went from Georgia to Mississippi State, Auburn. But when you were saying about that intentionality piece and knowing like what is not for you, that is God's guidance because
Mm,
like our mission and our assignment has our name on it.
that's
And we
good.
don't have time to be wasted with respect to trying to gain territory in a field that God didn't call for us. Like our
Ooh.
territory, like it that God has called for us, He's fashioned us for it. And He's
Mm,
fashioned us to impact it with God's kingdom culture and
wow.
everything about us with respect to our personality, our life experiences, our passions. If we're out of alignment with that, I believe that there's a grace that we may not necessarily have because
Hmm.
sometimes people are pursuing things that others want for them. But I
Hmm.
think in the grand scheme of life, we are living for an audience of one, and we want to ensure that since we are here, that means that we are purpose bearers, and God has something specific for us to do, and we want to make sure that we are making Him pleased with the work that we're doing, and
Mm,
that is making an eternal impact, and being significant as kingdom ambassadors. So with respect to knowing what not to do, I tried a lot of things. I thought I was going to be a lawyer.
mm,
I was debating a lot of different things, but I was just really trying my best to hear from God, even at a younger age. And my dad would always say, I was like, Dad, even when I changed my major, I was like, I feel like the Lord is leading me in this other area. He said, Cassandra, if God is telling you that, I have nothing to say because I know that God will never lead you in the wrong way.
mm,
And so for me, I recognize when you were also talking about pursuit or rather intentionality, like I think like what God has, we've all, hopefully have been spoken positively from other people, right?
hmm.
And they can see things in us. And, but I recognize, I don't know how long ago, that the promises of God, God has these intentions for us. He has this plan, but we have to yield ourselves to that plan and not just yield ourselves to that plan, but it makes me think of the people of Israel. It was like the promised land was theirs. It had already
Hmm.
been prophesied generations and generations ago, but they had to fight for it. They had to
Mm,
listen to God to get the strategy, and they had to do things that didn't always seem like to make sense, walking around Jericho 7 times and
hmm.
a loud shout would bring down the walls. Like, I think that's why, our paths, whether it's in business or whether God has us in the marketplace, working underneath, someone else, you have to be mindful and have a ear to hear God's strategy,
Mm,
because the promise that in the territory that God wants you to take over, I think a lot of times as believers, we think, oh, it's going to be handed to us because it's been prophesied or because it's been spoken over our lives. But
yeah.
we have to cooperate with the plans of
Mm,
God. And we can't be slowful in the plan with the plans of God. I feel like every person, if you are here and birthed into the earth, there's something of godly significance, even if that godly significance is you staying at home. And I believe one of the greatest mandates we have is to infuse a knowledge of God and a love for God into future generations. That's the one of the most important things we
mm,
have, especially if we have children. But I think that we have to be very intentional and proactive with cooperating and honestly sometimes contending for and fighting for the promises of God.
Mm. Woo, Dr. Cassandra, I got to tell you, you are preaching good. We could just end it right there. Man, so many good nuggets. There's multiple things I want to kind of pull on Dr. Cassandra. And folks, this is why we're gonna have her back too. There's no way to unpack everything, uh, even in what she just said. There's like threads off of threads on top of that. Uh, Dr. Cassandra, you mentioned, I'll touch on this and then we'll move into the relationships, the family, and some other things you brought up earlier. But you talked about Jericho. So in scripture, it's what we would think as humans. It's odd to, okay, I'm here to fight. Why am I walking around the city and then you want me to blow trumpet? Like, what is music and marching and then raising my voice in worship have to do with fighting? So I just wanted to highlight to our audience, for us, whatever your career path is, or if you started a business, we have things that show up like that for us, like non-traditional wisdom for our industry. And if we are being sensitive to what God is speaking to us, he might have divinely orchestrated it to where we have to do the non-traditional thing. Like when our whole industry is zigging, God might say to zag. And so I love that you brought that up about Jericho in particular, because when you think about military strategy, you do not think about music at all.
Yeah,
And then
no, you
also,
don't.
like, I can imagine it's like, when are we going to attack? When are we going to attack? And I'm, nope, just wait, by the way. And then the instruction to be quiet and don't say a word so that people aren't questioning the mission. My God. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that, Dr. Cassandra, because you bringing that up, it's sometimes we don't think about accounts like that in scripture, but as we think about the marketplace, it doesn't matter whether you're working with people, processes, or technology. God might be leading you to do something non-traditional in your career, in your entrepreneurship journey. So thank you, Dr. Cassandra, for bringing that up. I couldn't let that leave as you shared that. I was like, man, I don't want people to miss what she just said.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and trusting God, it took 7 days. Like what if they got tired on the second or the third day,
Hmm.
but being
Yeah.
obedient all the way through the entire instruction. And even before you see, the evidence of the outcome, like, whatever God has told you to do with respect to your input, doing that and trusting Him with the rest.
Mm.
I think is so important. And one thing I've learned is like I think I said mentorship. I didn't even know that I was talking a lot about mentorship, but that has been crucial because there are people who have gone before you who have wisdom for the area that God has for you. And
Mm.
it may not always be from, what you would expect. So I think about Moses, he was, he created God used him to lead a whole civilization and create a whole, honestly, new government. And
Mm.
so God kind of taught him in Pharaoh's house, and, like he was probably learning so many things about leadership over Egypt during those
Hmm.
years that he was there. And so God can use all of these experiences for his purpose.
Wow.
Even like your college experiences, sometimes it may not have been at a Christian university, but God can use those skills for his kingdom purpose, and everything can lead up to just it can be used as your training ground and preparation.
Mm.
But I say that mentorship piece has been critical to serve someone else's vision, to see how they operate, that, how do they manage the business aspects of running these huge operations.
Hmm.
And I think that's critical to humble yourself and be underneath someone and just let and just learn from watching them move.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think is really critical.
I couldn't agree more. And you said the H word, humility. Woo, that's a big part of the journey. Uh, Dr. Cassandra, there were I kind of as we pull this together, I want to give bullet points. You said your research on fathers. In a world where, gosh, we've got social wars, culture wars. We've got a lot of things going on with women right now. Honestly, a lot of like societal things, wrongs being righted. And underneath that, I was curious to ask you because if you're a father or a man, there are some interesting waters that are being navigated in these times where a lot of things are being, I don't want to say handled, but a lot of things are happening with regards to women being treated, number one, as followers of Christ. The first, they're daughters of God, but also just the respect, the pay, the whatever you merit, everything that God's daughters bring to the table, those things are being elevated. And some people are like, well, what's kind of happening? So in your research and talking about fathers, what have you seen as being critical to letting fathers know today in these times?
That's such a big question, such which has so many complex layers. And I think, fathers are, they provide what we see in the research is that
Mm,
fathers add something qualitatively unique to the family system as well as to child well-being. So,
hmm,
first and foremost, I just want to emphasize that fathers are crucial and critical for the well-being of their children. And personally, I value fathers and mothers and families all together.
hmm,
But I want to amplify that importance in an age where I feel like we're trying to push fathers to the margins.
yeah,
And with respect to, so in certain communities, especially if we're thinking about, in African American communities,
hmm,
we are starting to see that there's a lot of um, women who are doing well,
yeah, absolutely,
and that's a good thing. I wanted to make sure that as we lift up one, we're not pulling down another, you
yeah.
know. And so I think that that is uh, extremely critical um, as well, and understanding like just that importance. And I think sometimes we masculinity is important.
Mm,
Protection is important. What
mm,
the masculine provides for families, I believe, is critical, in my personal opinion. And I think that there has been a rhetoric. This is not research based. This is just my little opinion. And I'll tell you what is just my little opinion. But I think we've talked so much about toxic masculinity that we haven't thought about toxic independence
mm,
because, with respect to femininity,
mm,
because we, as family members at an intimate level, we were created for interdependence. And if we situate ourselves in such a place to where I can do bad all by myself, the mantra, I'm all the women independent, like that may not be the best.
mm,
Because we as human beings were created for relationship. And Harvard University, they've been doing a longitudinal study, one of the longest of its kind, looking at adult development and happiness over time. And what they have found is that what predicts health, happiness, And honestly, your lifespan, life, life expectancy, um, maybe not life expectancy, but like, promoting
Hmm.
long-term life is strong, healthy relationships. It's not a desire, it is a critical human need.
Mm.
And I think we have to see the symbiotic relationship between mothers and fathers and uplift them both together. And and so here's the thing that we've also seen as well with respect to like the economic standing of a lot of fathers.
Hmm.
So now we are no longer in the industrial age.
Hmm.
We're no longer even just in the information age. We are now in the age of AI.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about it, and in that, the level of kind of contributions and competitiveness has shifted for men, especially those who worked in industries. And so I think we have to find another way for, and of course, the way that we contribute to the family is so much more than what we give financially. But that does play a big role a lot of times in men's sense of um, efficacy
Hmm.
in their roles of being fathers, and a lot of men highly uh, value being a provider. So I think how can we help yet the more, even more men to be competitive in the current economy that we are in today because the landscape has shifted.
Mm.
And how can we promote more dependence and the strengths that everyone brings to the family. So I know I probably went on a rampage, but I
No,
think we
that
have to
was
go back
awesome.
to biblical design. God wants
Hmm.
oneness. He doesn't want one pitted against the other or one being
Yeah.
pushed down and or things of that nature. He wants us to be, co-heirs. He partners as we build families to further the kingdom agenda.
Mm. Woo, doctor, you man, you came for a lot of. I'm not even people. You came for this mindset that's being perpetuated across society and independence, and it's everywhere. So thank you for not only talking about the academic research part, but also just the anecdotal what happens day to day. So thank you for talking about the fatherhood and its impact on the family system. By the way, I haven't heard many people talk about the family as a system, but I don't want us to leave also without talking about marriage. As you know, I'm sure, Dr. Cassandra, like I hear so many single folks, and then unfortunately, we have the statistics are where they are with regard to divorce. Many are on second and third, even fourth marriages. So if you could speak to how critical the marriage part, so we have the children and the family unit, but the marriage and just maybe what you're seeing in marriages today, because when we look at the divorce rates and also just the feedback from the single community and people, I'm not knocking anyone, but they've got these lists and these requirements, and the man has to have this and the woman has to have that. So, can you just kind of give us your opinion on the state of the union of marriage and maybe even how the dating factors into that, but knowing that there's a future roadmap graced by God that marriage is a good thing.
It's a good thing. It is honorable and the bed is undefiled, and God honors marriage. And honestly, there is an anti-marriage culture and
Mm.
spirit that is rampant. And so, oh gosh, there's so much here.
This is why
So
we're gonna have to have
one,
her back for part two, folks. So much to unpack.
yes, we're thinking about marriage like from God's perspective and design. Like God wants to use each partner as an agent to remind the other of the love of Christ.
It's good.
And the oneness and the power that comes from that is to really further God's kingdom agenda. You know, it is so critical, and marriage is of all of the relationships that could have been used to compare Christ's relationship with the church is a marriage. So it just shows, the importance of this relationship. It is the foundation of the family.
Hmm.
It serves as a covering for the children. It serves as a covering for even the individuals. But what I see is in our culture, we have a voyeurism when it comes to relationships. We're
Ooh.
watching what everyone else is doing, their highlight reels, and we have not set realistic expectations for what is even the purpose of marriage and what a marriage
Mm.
is.
Wow.
And so we have approached marriage from from this perspective of honestly selfishness and self-fulfillment and self-gratification. And if anything, people are wanting to use others as a tool to feed that self-fulfillment, right? But
Mm.
at the end of the day, we have to recognize that not marriage being a good thing, but no one can take the place of the fullness that God puts into your life. And that ultimate relationship, that has to be the cup that
Mhm.
or that has to be the fountain that you are putting your cup under and saying, overflow into me from my relationship with Christ. And then from there, I serve my spouse. From there, I serve my child. But what is happening is we are putting our buckets underneath our relationships and saying, you imperfect person, feel me. And
Mm.
they may be able to feel you for a little bit of time, but it's not going to that won't last forever. So we have to position our hearts and put God in his correct place in our lives and see our relationships not as people to be used to help us get what we want in life, but how can I be used as a server, as a
Mm.
giver? And our individualistic culture honestly is not creating a healthy mindset that is needed to actually walk out unconditional love in marriage.
Mm. Woo, folks, man, this would be another 3 hours
Yes.
with,
And a
woo.
lot of people, I see it, they are afraid of marriage. They've seen divorce, and we see that, you know, coming from a divorced family or not having marriage in your family increases the apprehension of getting married.
Hmm.
Sadly enough, sometimes there's even a stigma around something that God calls honorable. And you have to be mindful, is my heart turning like the world's heart is turning toward marriage? Because that's not God's
Mm.
intent.
Wow. My goodness. Folks, I want to go longer, but we've got to let the doctor get back to what she does. So, Dr. Cassandra, my God, you have been used clearly by God, not just in this conversation, but in all the work that you're doing. Can you highlight for the audience where they can go to find all of your resources? I know you're a published author, you do research, you teach, you do marriage counseling, all those things. Where can people go to find out all your resources, also to work with you? Because folks, listen, I saw the little neck in the eyes. I can imagine her in a counseling session like, listen, you better come having done the work if you want to build a good marriage. So I was getting vibes. I was like, oh, I would love to be a fly on the wall for the counseling session. But where can people go to find out more about you and your work, Dr. Cassandra?
Yes, so upliftingrelationships.com is our
Mm.
website as well. We are looking honestly to partner with churches to do
Okay.
some relationship education. So if any churches are interested in partnering with us, we would be honored to be able to support them in their relationship education efforts. Because, one thing that we're also seeing is that the decline, if there is a relationship between fatherlessness and one's likelihood to accept Christ, and a lot of people do not
Mm.
recognize that. So the
Wow.
and so the decline in marriage leads to a decline in involvement directly within the home, of course.
Hmm.
And so, like, we think that these things don't matter. These things have a kingdom significance. And so,
Mm.
but yeah, that's a little side note uh, as well. So, we're looking to partner with churches and other organizations that want to uplift marriages and families and children. And that's what you can find me. I'm on Instagram, dr_Cassandra, as well. But just really wanting to help people with building the knowledge and skills needed to develop a healthy marriage and relationships.
My goodness, Dr. Cassandra. Listen, I'm saying this on there. We need to have we have a tools and resources series that we have, Dr. Cassandra. We might need to do like a multi-part where we just dig in to different things. But as Dr. Cassandra has alluded to, folks, if your church is out there, listen, we already know God is part. I mean, the marriage is part of God's plan and the plan for family, and it's critical. So please do reach out to her because this is needed. And if you think about all of the other conversations around discipleship, marriage is a big part of that. And the family, I keep coming back to that, Dr. Cassandra, the family being a system. My God. Like I could just sleep on that alone. But we are going to have you back for like a multi-part where we can go a little bit deeper with different aspects of fatherlessness and marriage. Because to your point, man, there's so much being said from the culture, and it'd be good for people just to have it unpacked well with an expert and a God-fearing one at that. That is going to shoot us straight, but also give the tools needed. So, folks, please, please, please find Dr. Cassandra. We'll have all of her information in the show notes, fortifiedlifepodcast.com. I can't thank you enough, Dr. Cassandra. We didn't even get into tell the folks how we had met years ago, and God even used that to bring her back up to me today. So everything is about timing. So, Dr. Cassandra, I can't thank you enough for hanging out with us here on the Fortified Life.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part.
Yes, and folks, if you're a big fan of the Marvel movies, what did they say at the end of the Avengers? The Avengers will return. I can tell you, Dr. Cassandra Bolar will return to the Fortified Life. She and I will work something out, but she'll be back. Can't thank you enough. Folks, you know how we leave things. Don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And remember, from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Make sure to subscribe, leave a positive review for the podcast. It helps with the shareability of the show and what God is doing on this platform. So, on your podcast platform of choice, leave a review and subscribe. Also, for our YouTube audience, for those who like to watch, go to our subscribe and like and share the videos on our YouTube channel, The Fortified Life. You could see and watch if you're a video person versus audio. Go to our YouTube channel and subscribe at The Fortified Life. But folks, that's all we've got time for. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life podcast.